Welcome. 40 days to the Iowa caucuses, and the GOP race is narrowing. A recent Quinnipiac University poll shows Senator Ted Cruz nearly tied with Donald Trump and the others trailing. And now there are fewer others. Following Republican governors Rick Perry, Scott Walker, and Bobby Jindal, Senator Lindsey Graham has now exited the presidential arena. It came just in time to remove his name from the South Carolina ballot and will likely save Graham from an embarrassing showing in his home state there. Speaking of embarrassment, it appears Bernie Sanders people couldn't resist downloading some of Hillary Clinton's secret plans this week when her voter data accidentally became available to them. Bernie fired one worker and suspended others and apologized to Hillary. What else went on this week, besides more sexist remarks from Donald Trump, which we will get to later? Chris Christie loosened the gun carry laws in New Jersey, bringing him praise where he wants it in New Hampshire. Jeb Bush claimed he is a better governor, or was a better governor than Christie is. And yes, there was a Democratic debate, though it was buried on the weekend again. Did you miss it? Hillary and Bernie disagreed on health care and expensive government programs, but for the most part, they chose to attack their common enemy, Trump.
He is becoming ISIS's best recruiter. They are going to people showing videos of Donald Trump insulting Islam and Muslims in order to recruit more radical jihadists.
The next day, Trump shot back that Hillary invented this idea of ISIS using video of him as a recruiting tool. Meanwhile, Trump still can't find the video of those New Jersey Muslims celebrating 9/11. In the weekend debate, Sanders accused Trump of scapegoating.
And somebody like a Trump comes along and says, I know the answers. The answer is that all of the Mexicans, they're criminals and rapists. We got to hate the Mexicans. Those are your enemies. We hate all the Muslims because all of the Muslims are terrorists. We got to hate the Muslims. Meanwhile, the rich get richer. So what I say to those people who go to Donald Trump's rallies, understand, he thinks a low minimum wage in America is a good idea. He thinks low wages are a good idea. I believe we stand together to address the real issues facing this country, not allow them to divide us by race or where we come from. Let's create an America that works for all of us, not the handful on top.
Senator, thank you.
And is Hillary too close to the handful at the top? She had a witty answer to a related question from moderator David Muir.
The last time you ran for president, Fortune magazine put you on its cover with the headline, Business Loves Hillary, pointing out your support from many CEOs in corporate America. I'm curious, 8 years later, should corporate America love Hillary Clinton?
Everybody should. Be the president for the struggling, the striving, and the successful.
If Hillary is nominated, she may well face another Washington insider. In these weeks before the first primaries, it looks like Republican voters are opening up to the idea of a Beltway candidate, like Senator Ted Cruz, rather than a businessman or surgeon on the outside track. Yes, time for the horse race. According to a recent HuffPost YouGov Live interview poll of registered voters, there has been a softening in opposition to establishment candidates. Last month, just 16% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents, shown here in red, preferred an establishment candidate to an outsider, but that number has since grown by about 10 points. Those preferring an outsider candidate, shown in lighter red, fell by 10 points. The number who are not sure or don't care in gray has remained relatively unchanged. Candidate polls appear to mirror the change. Ben Carson and Trump had led national polls of candidates by a wide margin, but lately Carson's numbers have fallen sharply as Senators Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz were steadily climbing. According to 538's David Wasserman, there is also an education divide that separates the front-running GOP candidates. In a Quinnipiac poll released Tuesday, Donald Trump scored 6 percentage points higher among those without college degrees, shown in the lighter gray column. Similarly, Ted Cruz and Ben Carson each skewed 5 points up with those less educated voters. This could help their campaigns because non-degree supporters are more unified behind their candidates in general. Marco Rubio, on the other hand, registers 10 points higher among those holding a college degree, shown in dark gray. This difference in appeal will likely be a determining factor as the candidates face off in Iowa and New Hampshire. What else did Quinnipiac find out? An uneasy road for Trump, though he still narrowly leads their poll. 58% of Republicans indicated they might change their current choice. Not an encouraging statistic when 50% of Americans said they would be embarrassed by a Trump presidency. Finally, Bernie Sanders might not mind facing Trump. Quinnipiac showed the Social Democrat crushing the developer 51% to 38% in a hypothetical general election matchup. Okay, enough numbers. Time to discuss an underlying issue in the campaign. With 2 women in the primaries, it's important to look closely at the gender dynamics of the presidential race, especially with such contrasting women candidates. On the Democratic side, there is, of course, Hillary Clinton, with a long history of fighting for women's rights. 25 years ago, as First Lady, she gave a memorable speech in Beijing at the 4th UN Conference on Women. She directly criticized China's treatment of women, adding that the issues facing women and girls were often ignored worldwide. Then she reframed the challenge.
I believe that now, on the eve of a new millennium, it is time to break the silence. It is time for us to say here in Beijing, and for the world to hear, that it is no longer acceptable to discuss women's rights as separate from human rights.
The politics of pink, Hillary Clinton in 1995. Then on the GOP side, there's former Hewlett-Packard CEO Carly Fiorina. She says she does not want to attract votes because she is a woman, but rather because she is the best candidate. However, Fiorina does draw attention to her being called, quote, every B word in the book, as she has fought her way up the ladder and through the glass ceiling into the primetime Republican debates. And after watching her male opponents sparring in the latest GOP debate, she decided to play the gender card.
I'll just add that Margaret Thatcher once said, if you want something talked about, ask a man. If you want something done, ask a woman.
So to help us talk about the gender dynamics of the campaigns, we are joined by political consultant and frequent contributor to the New York Daily News, Washington Post, and other publications, Alexis Grinnell. Thanks for coming. Welcome.
Thank you.
And you said we have 2 kinds of feminism in this campaign. Want to elaborate?
Sure. So Hillary Clinton, of course, is this famous figure who really made a revolutionary statement in 1995 when she said that women's rights are human rights. It's this idea that we have a fix-the-system model of feminism, which says that institutions are what create inequality. Carly Fiorina reflects a fix-the-woman model. She says that for her, feminism is allowing women to have the freedom of choice to live the life they want to lead. But she opposes paid leave, she opposes an increase in the minimum wage, and she is against abortion. These are all issues that disproportionately impact women's lives. So it seems to me that she doesn't really have a policy prescription for other women, whereas, in fact, she herself, ironically, is a deeply feminist figure. So it's sort of a fascinating discourse on how you can be sort of emblematic of the feminist ideal without actually reflecting the values that sort of equality.
So as a political consultant, what do you think Fiorina's strategy is there? Is it that there really are a lot of women who are Republicans who share the values that you just described? Or in order to win the GOP primaries, she's going to have to throw any actual, genuine, different feminist side than she's talking about overboard, because she's really got to get the men.
Well, it's sort of an interesting issue you raised in the intro about how she played the quote-unquote gender card. Gender, of course, is not a stand-in for woman. It includes men and everyone on the spectrum. And I would argue that men in the Republican primary are absolutely playing the gender card, even though we don't call it, by performing masculinity at every opportunity, especially in the last CNN debate when everybody was pounding their chest to prove they were more man enough to be president. She points it out, and we call it the gender card, but in fact, I think she's really, speaking to a Republican female voter base that very much wants to be recognized and is inspired by the fact that they have a credible, thoughtful, and really exceptional debater in their camp. It's, men are absolutely the base of the Republican primary vote, but it's not exclusive to think that they would also vote maybe for a woman, although she's certainly at a disadvantage when we see a room full of men trying to prove themselves as the most man.
And you're talking, of course, about how they were pounding their chests, how they'd be tougher against ISIS and that sort of thing.
Right, and that's also a number one issue for GOP voters, national security, whereas for Democrats it's a top 5 issue. The economy is what leads, and we saw that in the Democratic debate this weekend, where all the Democrats, with the exception of Martin O'Malley, who I will say charitably is in this race, but Hillary and Bernie opened on the economy. Hillary pivoted quickly to national security, but Bernie didn't get to it till the very end.
What do you make of the fact that Democrats and Republicans don't even have the same top issue? We've seen that in the polls. You just referred to it. Is this at all gender determined, that Democrats see the economy as number one, even after Paris and San Bernardino?
So that's a fascinating question, actually. So women are the majority of the Democratic primary base, and women are actually the majority of the electorate who turns out on election day. So it's an overlapping issue we have, which if women are the majority of the Democratic base and the sort of issues of national security and defense are typically male-coded issues, which is not something I would dispute, actually, although we identify those things as male activities. One, because the military has been overwhelmingly male. Women are only 14.5% of the military. And also this idea of leadership is deeply coded as male. Aggressiveness, decisiveness. Women get punished for exhibiting those characteristics, whereas men are rewarded. So it's an interesting question. I would argue, though, that Hillary's really redefining what that means. She is somebody who polls very well on the question of strong leader. 69% of Americans see her as very tough. And a Washington Post ABC News poll recently found that in a head-to-head matchup with any of her GOP rivals, voters say that she's better on national security. So it's sort of a transformative moment. Even though Democrats don't rank it as highly as Republicans, I think we're seeing the electorate increasingly likely to see women in a leadership role on national security.
How do you see Trump and gender in the context of his, if we want to call his campaign sort of shocking straight talk, as, straight talk as he sees it, where he's willing to say, and probably very calculatedly says things like, Carly Fiorina, who could stand to look at that face for 4 years if she's elected president?
Right.
The new one is in referring to Hillary Clinton, that she got schlonged by Obama in 2008. For those of you who don't know Yiddish, schlong is Yiddish for the male sex organ. He says that with some effect in mind.
Right.
Is it gender-based?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't call that straight talk. I think it's hate talk, and specifically misogyny. So it seems very clear to me that Donald Trump is in some kind of measuring contest to prove who's most man to lead the country. That's this sort of puerile sandbox humor. And honestly, I think Hillary is only at an advantage by it. He looks so ridiculous compared to her. But yes, obviously that stuff is gender-based, and the implication there is that a woman isn't up to the task.
Is there research, as I've heard there is, that says a very well-qualified woman will beat a mediocre man, all other things being equal?
So that's a recent data out of Vanderbilt University found that even though men and women who were polled in a focus group still identified leadership as a primarily male occupation, when they have more information about a female candidate, and when that female candidate is perceived to be more qualified than your average male candidate, they will vote for the more qualified female candidate. But two things are necessary to do that: adequate information and for her to indeed prove her qualifications.
Which is a higher bar?
It's a higher bar. We have, for instance, Marco Rubio, who's a 44-year-old first-term senator out of Florida. He's got a baby face, but doesn't seem to lack any credibility on this sort of let's go get ISIS rhetoric he's spouting. In fact, when he and Hillary are placed in a head-to-head, he's her nearest rival, and she's got about 25 years on him and a lot more experience. Is
Hillary Clinton, to your eye, running differently from 2008?
Definitely.
In terms of her identification as a woman?
Absolutely. So part of the data show that, in fact, you cannot get away from the gender issue, so the best strategy is to confront it, and that's what organizations like the Barbara Lee Foundation instruct female candidates to do. In 2008, her chief strategist, Mark Penn, in these now infamous memos, essentially said the country didn't want a first mama and tried to remake his candidate as a man. She really backed down from the gender issue altogether, and she really played down her own advantages, which I think hurt her. Now we see her leading with the fact that she's a grandmother, that she's concerned about paid leave. There's always a sort of perfunctory but sincere reference to Planned Parenthood. She's not getting away from it. Even in those last two debates, we saw her late after the commercial break from a bathroom break, and she seemed to confront the issue head on. She was confident, she showed up, and she said the first time, well, it takes women a little longer. And the second time, she kind of gave this sorry, not sorry. She seems to have really accepted and grown into herself as a candidate and as a woman running for office.
All right, stay with us. We're going to bring in some additional evidence on one of the issues. Mm-hmm. And it's time for Evidence-Based Politics, where we meet a scholar who has studied an issue oversimplified by campaign rhetoric. Though they want Obamacare repealed, Republican contenders have not given much attention to the Affordable Care Act. But at last Saturday's Democratic debate, moderator Martha Raddatz quoted numbers from the Department of Health and Human Services claiming that although 17 million more people have health insurance, the cost of coverage went up 27% in 5 years, and deductibles are up 67%. In response, Clinton referred to the problems as glitches and offered fixes. Bernie Sanders wants to replace Obamacare.
And so what I have proposed, number one, is a $5,000 tax credit to help people who have very large out-of-pocket costs be able to afford those. Number two, I want Medicare to be able to negotiate for lower drug prices, just like they negotiate with other countries' health systems. We end up paying the highest prices in the world. And I want us to be absolutely clear about making sure the insurance companies in the private employer policy arena, as well as in the Affordable Care exchanges, are properly regulated so that we are not being gamed.
Why is it that we spend almost 3 times per capita as to what they spend in the UK, 50% more than what they pay in France, countries that guarantee health care to all of their people and in many cases have better health care outcomes? Bottom line, this ties into campaign finance reform. The insurance companies, the drug companies are bribing the United States Congress. We need to pass a Medicare for all single-payer system. It will lower the cost of health care for a middle-class family by thousands of dollars a year.
So just who exactly is Obamacare serving right now? Are those government numbers right? Joining us via Skype from Cambridge, Massachusetts, Benjamin Summers, professor of health policy and economics at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. His study, Changes in Self-Reported Insurance Coverage, Access to Care and Health under the Affordable Care Act, appeared in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Welcome. Hello from New York.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Are those numbers that we heard quoted by Martha Raddatz, the moderator in the debate, about right? The number of uninsured has gone down substantially, but the cost of premiums and deductibles in the general health insurance economy are going up dramatically?
Dramatically is an interesting choice of words. I think what we do know is that the Affordable Care Act in its first 2 years of kind of full implementation with the marketplaces and the Medicaid expansion has produced the largest drop in the uninsured rate in the U.S. since the creation of Medicare and Medicaid in the 60s. And in fact, the uninsured rate now stands at its lowest in recorded history, as long as the U.S. has been tracking it.
In fact, hang on one second. We're going to put up a graph that will show this. This just runs from 2012 to the present, but right. Obamacare really came into being in 2013, and we can see the line in the chart there. And boy, what a difference. You could see where the curve would have taken us had the current trends without Obamacare been continuing, uninsured going up, and we see how significantly it has, in fact, come down. So that matters.
Right. In our study, we estimated, compared to these pre-ACA trends and taking into account the changing demographics in the economy, that the drop from the open enrollment periods in 2014 and 2015 was about 16 million people gaining insurance who wouldn't have otherwise had it. And then there are also a couple, 2 to 3 million young adults who gained coverage even earlier under the ACA provision that let them stay on their parents' plan through age 26. So you put those numbers together and you see that this is a sizable increase in insurance coverage. Bernie Sanders is right. We're still, even after the ACA is implemented and as the enrollment continues this year, we are still likely to have 20 million or more uninsured Americans, which stands out in the industrialized world that we still have that. The ACA is not a universal coverage law. It's often called a near universal coverage. But clearly, in terms of coverage and access to care, where we are now compared to 2010, it's a sea change for tens of millions of people. But the
Affordable Care Act was supposed to bend the cost curve down through various pressure points. Can we say that that is not working? There's certainly a natural pressure for costs to go up because more things are covered, like previous conditions. And we don't, I think, see the number of young, healthy people who would be inexpensive signing up that the administration has hoped. So things are more expensive than we would hope they would be?
So, I think we have to, when we talk about affordability, there are a couple different measures of that. So one way to talk about affordability is for the average American, for consumers. And in that regard, our study is pretty helpful in illustrating that, again, compared to kind of where trends were before the ACA, that there are millions of more Americans now who say they can afford their medications, who can afford their primary care, who don't put off care because of cost. When you're going from uninsured to insured, that's just such a dramatic change that produces these really large effects at the population level. But the question in the debate that is a valid one was looking at the overall cost trajectory for the society as a whole, not individual households. How much are we spending of our economy on healthcare? That does continue to rise, but it has actually slowed its rate of increase over the past several years. Now, how much of that is the Affordable Care Act and some of the changes in how we pay providers and incentives for quality? Maybe that's part of it, although a big chunk of it is also this is during the same period as a big recession and slow economic recovery and those factors almost always help slow down cost growth. So the total affordability issue for the government and for society, I don't think the Affordable Care Act has been a slam dunk, but certainly for households gaining coverage, it's been pretty clear this has been beneficial.
Let me bring Alexis Grinnell back in here. First, do you have a question for the professor based on anything you've heard?
Yeah. So I was reading the study last night, and I noticed that the rural population appeared to be oversampled at 70% in one of the breakdowns. And I was curious to know if the distribution based on geography, if you have any theories about what accounts for that?
Well, I think the survey source we're using is nationally representative. So the rural population is much outweighed by the urban population. But what we did find was that in general, that the gains in coverage and the gains in access to care were happening pretty much across the board. We were seeing it for whites and non-whites, and in fact, larger coverage gains for racial and ethnic minorities. We also see that there are these impressive gains in access, again, for all groups, but particularly some benefits for non-white minorities. And then similarly, urban, rural divides, gender, male, female, there are pretty much broad-based gains in coverage and access. And so this is kind of encouraging that this isn't just helping one segment of the population.
Your study also looks at health, and really that's the bottom line, other than economics, which is a different kind of bottom line. Do you actually have findings this soon into the history of Obamacare, whether people are reporting better health or fewer, health-related activity limitations. I think that was one of your metrics than before.
Well, so the survey, because it's all based on kind of a telephone survey, we are somewhat limited into what we can look at. But exactly what you said, we can ask people generally how they feel about their health and whether their health is impacting their ability to kind of engage in their normal activities. And on both of those measures, again, at the national level, the trends seem to be moving in the right direction since the Affordable Care Act kicked in. Now, whether that also translates into improvements in some of the, the harder measures of health like blood pressure and cholesterol and heart attack rates and mortality, that typically takes longer to develop from an expansion of coverage. And also it takes longer for us to get the data that we need to do that sort of analysis. So stay tuned. Researchers will certainly be looking at that over the next few years.
Alexis, as a political consultant, are you surprised how little the Republican hopefuls seem to be going after Obamacare? They always give it lip service, but they don't seem, to my eye, to be making it a centerpiece like 2 years ago.
Well, national security is a top issue for Republicans. It makes so much more sense for them to beat that drum. They'll win more votes there.
Do you see Obamacare as a gender-related issue in any way? We're certainly hearing how it's a class issue.
Sure.
Some people call it one of the great civil rights bills of our time.
Absolutely.
Because it's sweeping in so many previously uninsured African Americans.
Particularly African American women who are, when we're talking about an intersectional analysis, the poorest and therefore the ones who I think have probably benefited the most. But I think the Affordable Care Act, as the professor's talking about, has had this sort of broad sweeping benefit across class, gender, and race as well.
Professor, are you surprised at how little the Republicans are making this a centerpiece? And they did just pass that budget in Congress for next year, which funded Obamacare, I believe, at the expected level. So they didn't take a stand on it.
At one point I do want to clarify, which I think is, while I did say that there are these broad-based gains, there is one group we know that is not benefiting, and these are the low-income adults in the states where they have opted to not expand Medicaid. This is in 20 states, and this is a group of about 3 or 4 million poor adults who simply have no way of now getting affordable health insurance because their governors or state legislatures have yet to expand. But in the broader question, it's a lot more popular to run against a law before there are millions of people who are directly benefiting from it. And that said, though, there still are significant legislative battles going on to undermine the law. The Senate passed through the budget reconciliation process the first effective repeal of the ACA that they've been able to get through and try to send to the president. Of course, President Obama will veto it. But, they are still moving on this front. It's very popular still in the Republican base to talk about repealing the Affordable Care Act. It will be interesting to see in a general election how much traction that gains. I think most Americans feel like that battle has been fought, and at this point we ought to work on improving the law. But public opinion still shows, the polls show there's a lot of animosity still towards this law.
Well, we have
in the past.
A long way to go before the voting. Thank you both very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And that's POTUS 2016 for today. We're here each week at this time calling the presidential horse race and pouring cold, hard facts on the overheated campaign rhetoric. 8 days to 2016, 40 days to the Iowa voting. To paraphrase Betty Davis in All About Eve, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy new year. I'm Brian Lehrer. Have a good holiday.